Couple of thoughts. Obviously, yesterday was the 15th anniversary of 9/11. We had Brian Birdwell on the beginning of last hour, who survived the Pentagon crash. Friday, we had Leslie Haskin on, who was in Tower 1. And I'm just reminded of how some of us have been through literally life-changing moments. And some of us, I don't want to minimize, but some of us, let's just say, haven't had challenges to that extent. And yet we struggle with faith, or we spend time and energy focusing on things that, in my view, in the bigger scheme of life, really not that important. Brian Birdwell, in closing, if you missed the interview, can always go to kkla.com for the podcast. He is a senator in the state of Texas in the 22nd District. And his closing comment was, in essence, paraphrasing, he's really grieved by our culture and our country right now and what's going on. And it kind of, in my mind, hearkened me back to a time when I was really concerned about culture, but with a much different lens than I have now. For those of you that don't know, I was a relativist. I was a New Age teacher that espoused kind of a relativistic view. There is no truth. There's only relative truth, no absolute truth. And when you talk about the battle for culture, there are people that are relativists, that somehow, hey, you know, what I feel is true and what you know may not agree with me, but your truth is just as important as mine. We see some of this insanity on college campuses where they're setting up zones by which, and more, you see a penchant to lean toward certain modes of speech as being categorized eventually in the hate speech. We have politically correct times where we're sensitive to each other. Don't offend me. I mean, it's really weird. It's really the truth of where things are now. Secularism, another battle for culture. No, there's no God. Probably the largest small g God of the day is the self-centered God, or selfishness. I'm all that matters. Some of us are materialists. Man, I want more stuff. My guest Friday, Leslie Haskin, the moment before her life was forever changed, when the first plane hit Tower 1, she was all about moving up the corporate ladder and attaining nice stuff. And there are some people that are into materialism in our culture. Give me more. And then lastly, another area that I was somewhat enthralled by in my New Age days, and that's mysticism. Like, what's it all about? Is there anybody out there? So the battle for culture. Secularism says there is no God. Relativism says there is no truth. Selfishness, I'm all that matters. Materialism, give me more stuff. Mysticism, is there anybody out there? And as we live and breathe in this moment by God's grace, what are you battling for? Is there a battle in your life? Maybe you're concerned about culture. And this is an area of emphasis in your life where you spend a lot of time and energy, and you see it as a battle, if you will. For me, as a Christian man, I see a lot of the battle being in the area of spiritual warfare. We talk a lot about it on the program. We may talk a bit about it tonight at First Step. We do the men's gatherings twice a year. This last one we did, a lot of emphasis and discussion on spiritual warfare. Some of us, we're in a war and we don't even know it as men. We're just kind of flailing along, caught up in the whims of culture. So I think where I'd like to go, obviously inviting you to call the program, 888-995-5552, would be in a couple of areas. Number one, when I talk about the battle for culture, do you see a battle for culture? A friend of mine who will go unnamed, we were just recently talking about the interview with Brian Birdwell, a man that survived the Pentagon plane terrorist act, 39 surgeries, burns over 60% of his body. I can't imagine what it was like to live those moments and days and months and years later, battling for his life. Maybe some of you are battling for your life. But this unnamed person said, there's his story, and then there's someone that's really upset about said political topic of the day. You can take your pick. Like somehow this is something that really denotes all of us getting so upset about, when in the bigger scheme of life and death, it really isn't that important.